Hi, I'm Mary Louise Van Atta, and I'm coming to you today from CCTV, continuing discussions about diabetes in our community. And I'm really excited today to have two fabulous guests with us. Nathaniel and Tiffany, why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
My name is Nathaniel Darnell. I'm Vice President of Diabetes Support Services here in Salem, Oregon.
I'm Tiffany Robbins. I am a certified personal trainer for Epic Fitness.
Welcome, you guys. So Diabetes Support Services is a nonprofit here in Salem. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Diabetes Support Services is 8 years old. It was co-founded by Al and Sandra Underberg, who have been members of the diabetic community for over 50 years. Al was diagnosed at the age of 22, was told he'd be dead by the age of 45, and turned 74, almost
Really?
3 weeks ago.
That's fantastic.
And so they started doing community intervention and outreach 8 years ago. And recently I became affiliated with the organization to help with the organization's growth and do a lot of research and a lot of liaison work with groups like Willamette University, OHSU, and Kaiser Permanente.
Sure, very big issue in our community,
Huge.
isn't it?
It's enormous.
What are we finding? What's
well-
happening in the diabetic world?
Well, something that's changed dramatically over the past 20 years is just the rate of our youth developing diabetes. Up to 25% of our youth are either pre-diabetic or diabetic, and it's 20 years ago that was unheard of. If someone was a child and diabetic, they were a diabetic type 1. And now we have individuals that are 10, 13 years old, they're developing diabetes type 2.
So type 1 is the one that's a medical condition that you're...
Well, they're both medical conditions, but the bigger issue in type 1s is that the pancreas stops working.
Okay.
So they no longer produce insulin.
Okay,
That's
so
either
that
from,
can happen to me.
Yeah, trauma
Defying
and infection.
Not even on my lifestyle. It just happens.
Exactly.
Okay.
Type 2 is highly correlated with food and sugar, quite frankly.
Okay. That's when we hear about that people are developing as they're getting older.
Yeah,
It used to be an older person's disease.
That's correct. And so it's often defined as a lifestyle disease. But more recently, as a lot of us have been going over more research, we realize that that's a component of it, and fitness is vital. I mean, many of our youth they're not as active as they used to be. But another equally important, if not greater, issue is the amount of processed foods that they're eating the previous generations never consumed, and it's having such profound impacts on their blood sugar levels and setting them up for all of these risk factors, as they get older. And for the first time in American history, and this is straight out of the New England Journal of Medicine, the youngest generation of American youth may be the first in history not to live longer than the generation that preceded it, simply because of the rates of obesity and diabetes.
And diabetes contributes to that. And so, Nathaniel, I know you brought with you today Tiffany Robbins, who is a certified personal trainer who understands exercise, but I also understands diabetes.
I do.
So tell me your story.
Well, I'm 26 years old, and I have lived with type 1 for nearly 25 years.
Wow.
So I was diagnosed at the age of 1, nearly 2, and I do not remember being very different as a child. Diabetes was something that my mother took care of, and it was everyday life for me. I would get my injections on time, I would eat my snacks on time, and everything was very scheduled. My childhood was fairly normal. I was really active. I went out and I played with other kids. I rode my four-wheeler. I did swim team. I was your everyday average child. And it wasn't until I was a teenager that the differences in my life and what I went through day to day compared to the other teens really stood out. My parents put me in a private school when I was younger so that I had more of a controlled environment, so smaller class sizes. And really the only distinct memory I have growing up was I got snacks when the other kids didn't. And
the kids are like, what?
Yeah, and when there was birthdays, I didn't get a cookie or a cake. I got something a little more sensible. But as a teenager, I entered a public high school, and it was a world that I had never seen. I did not know that kids were so judgmental, and it was incredibly important to fit in. Going into a school where there was over 2,000 teenagers made me feel like I stood out. And I really did not know how to socialize with new kids. I had grown up with the same people, kindergarten through 8th grade. And so...
And probably you didn't have your mom there all the time, making sure everything went exactly how it was supposed to go.
Oh, there was no mother hen, and there was no, elected teacher to make sure that I was doing fine. And I really started to feel uncomfortable. I started to feel like I stood out. And one of the biggest things that I had found was my friends socially wanted to go out and eat.
Sure.
And our lunchtime was our only real social time to just make friends, and it revolved around food. And it was hard for me because I felt a little limited. I felt like I didn't get to eat what the other kids were getting. I felt like it wasn't fair that I had to somewhat hide my diabetes. I had to go to the office to do injections. They requested that I do not do it in front of any of the other kids. Or I can remember being in the bathroom and having a teenager look at me and just be disgusted with the fact that I had a syringe. And I looked at them and I said, "I'm diabetic," and she just kind of shrugged me off and walked away.
They didn't understand.
They didn't know
the conditions. So.
And I got to the point to where I felt depressed. I didn't know how to make new friends. I didn't know how to fit in. I felt like I stood out. And so I decided I wasn't going to take care of it anymore. I wasn't going to.
You were done, huh? Done?
I was done. I had had diabetes for 14 years and I was done. I thought every day of my life is controlled. I want some freedom.
What an unusual thing for a teenager to want some
freedom.
to want some freedom.
Some freedom.
Yeah.
So I quit taking my injections.
Wow.
I quit testing my blood sugar. I started eating whatever I wanted whenever I wanted. And I remember at first it was like, oh my gosh, I just felt odd. I didn't feel good at all. And I kind of associated that with the fact that I was incredibly unhappy. And so the more that I didn't take care of myself, the more I got used to it. And eventually a blood sugar of 80 became a blood sugar of 300.
And what's a normal blood sugar for
someone
folks?
who's type 1, between 80 and 120 is a safe place to sit. If you're really active.
So you really went way over the top.
Above and beyond.
Okay.
300 became normal, 600 became normal.
Oh, wow.
800 became normal.
And what kind of risks are you facing when you're getting up that high?
You could die at any minute. With a blood sugar of over 1,000, you could go into a coma.
Wow.
And as a teenager, it's not something that's real to you. It's not real. You think,
you're invincible. Remember being an invincible teenager? I think we were all like that at
you're
some
invincible.
point.
And I thought if I didn't look at the numbers, I'm not going to see it. It's not there. And so I refused to check my blood sugar. And I lived with blood sugars of over 1,000.
Wow.
And my meter wouldn't, a blood tester usually does not read over 400 or 500. So I would go into the doctor's office. They would force me to have my blood tested. They would see my blood sugars were 12 or 1,300, and they would rush me off to the hospital. And in the hospital, I would get a lecture. People would make me feel bad for neglecting my disease. I would be put on a liquid diet, and 2 days later, I would be sent home. And my family fought. They fought really hard to make me do what I needed to, but immediately the teenage mind in me said, why do I want to listen to what you're saying? I want to do what I want to do. So the more they fought with me, the more I fought back. And
I assume your health was in pretty bad shape then. Or would no one from the outside know?
you know, the thing with diabetes is complications from not taking care of yourself. There are symptoms that are immediate, but the damage shows up years later.
Oh, okay.
And so seemingly I looked fine. And then the weight loss started, and I remember there was a period of time when I wasn't taking my injections that I had gone from my average healthy weight of 120 pounds. I had gotten depressed and bumped up to about 170. And then when I quit taking care of myself, I, in 1 year, dropped from 170 pounds to about 85.
Oh my. So that was really probably a wake-up call for everyone around you that something wasn't
It was
right.
something that I didn't notice very much, but everybody else around me thought something's wrong. And I lived in the routine of getting up, throwing up in the shower 2 or 3 times, going to school, and going home early, probably at 1 o'clock, 12:30, nearly every day for about 2 years. And then my parents had decided maybe it's her school. Maybe it's the fact we put her in this school. So they moved me to another school. Same thing. Same.
So then you're even, more set back with your relationships and all of those things that.
I was the new kid again.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, looking at you now, something must have changed. Take me there. I'm dying to hear the story.
Well, I had lived like that for, at this time, 5 years. I left high school for an entire year because I was too sick to sit in class. And I can remember graduating from high school, and on my night of my graduation, I was at the party, and I was eating the cake and pizza with all the other kids, and I fell asleep. And I remember waking up at the end of the party. And I didn't fall asleep because I was tired. I fell asleep because my blood sugar was well over 1,000. And I couldn't consciously keep myself awake. Your blood becomes like syrup, and everything slows down. So I woke up and I thought to myself, oh my God, not only did I miss the party, like I missed high school. I missed everything. I was too sick to experience high school. And so I thought to myself, I missed my life, but now I'm going to miss everything that's coming next. I'm going to die. And I can remember being terrified. I'm going to die if I don't change something. And so I decided slowly I was going to start taking my insulin. And I can remember the day I started, I gave myself just a small injection. And my legs and my arms and my hands and my face swelled up like a balloon. My skin got tight like a sausage casing, and I started shaking. And it was my body just reacting to not being able to utilize sugar for so long. I had terrible swelling in my legs to where I couldn't wear shoes. I had to wear slippers. And I would sweat consistently to the point of where my shirt was dripping in sweat. In the middle of winter, I was wearing a tank top.
So your body was trying to get itself back in balance, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
So, it took me an entire year. And the biggest changes that I had to make were I had to get rid of the food that I was eating, because in high school, I would drink a half gallon of orange juice. I would eat 10 ice cream sandwiches in a row. I would eat tubs of Velveeta cheese and donuts and pizza and anything I could find. And when you don't have any insulin, there's no way to find any kind of satisfaction when you're eating. Your body can't use the sugar that you're eating.
Got it.
So you feel like you're starving. And so I was eating all day long. Fast food 4 or 5 times. And I was starving. And I couldn't figure out, why am I still hungry? I'd keep eating and eating. And so I had to go with cold turkey. I knew I couldn't slowly wean off of that. I had to get it out of my life. And so I went for natural foods. And I went for fruits and vegetables, yogurts, lean meats, and a small amount of whole grains. But bread, honestly, it was something that I knew I had a problem with.
That's your trigger.
And I wanted to get rid of it because it made it easier for me to stay on track. So with changing my diet, it took me a year to get my blood sugars in a normal range, and within a year, with the help of a really amazing endocrinologist, I went from an A1C of a 17.5.
Okay, now what's an A1C?
It is
Not to get too off track, but
a hemoglobin A1C is the measurement of your blood sugar, your average blood sugar over an extended period of time. So it's usually between 2 and 3 months.
okay.
So the level of A1C is just a way of expressing how high your blood sugars on average are.
So get to know yourself.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
A type 1 diabetic should sit at about a 6. A 6 is good for a type 1. So being a 17.5, it was shocking to my doctors and the hospitals that I had been to. They had never seen someone alive that was that high.
It stops at 20. You can't go any higher than 20. Once you hit 20, you're dead.
Okay.
0, you're dead. 20, you're dead. You want to be in the sweet spot
Okay.
right around 6.
Well, you must have done something going the right direction.
I just remember looking back and doctors looking at me and they said, "How are you walking? How are you're functioning?" They didn't know how I was just like, "Someone get me a sandwich." Like, they didn't know how I was functioning day to day like an average person.
So when did you reach out to DSS?
Well,
What
after
point
I got my diabetes under control, I ended up going to college and had really found that exercise was the one thing that helped me. I ran into a million different complications, things that were detrimental to my life, and I had to do something to save myself, so I started exercising. And, it was a very long journey coming from what happened after high school to the complications. Once I got everything under control, I ran into things that I didn't know how to deal with. And so, my first term of college, I felt like I had something in my eyes. And I thought it was makeup, and I would rub it, and I think, this is odd. So I went to the eye doctor. I drove myself there, and he said, "If you don't have surgery right now, you will be blind for the rest of your life." And as a 19-year-old girl, I said, are you kidding? And he said, "No, you need to have surgery today. We're sending you to the retina specialist in Salem. You are going to have surgery today." And I said, "Oh my God." And I just remember breaking down thinking, no, not me. That doesn't happen to me. I'm the diabetic that had the highest blood sugars ever. And
So I'm assuming it's a complication from diabetes then that
yes.
you had.
I was diagnosed with diabetic retinopathy. It is a condition that you do develop from having out of control high blood sugars or long-term diabetes that is not under tight control. So I had surgery, and I spent my entire first year of college with a disability. I was legally blind and could not read, could not put makeup on, could not drive. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face after having surgery. And I can remember one moment being in the bathroom and walking by the mirror and turning and looking in the mirror and screaming because I couldn't see my face. It terrified me. And so, I kept going, and I thought to myself, you know what, I've come this far, I'm not going to stop now. And I ran into other issues, circulatory problems, gastrointestinal problems. I have a paralyzed stomach. So eating, I would eat and I would immediately vomit. I had circulatory issues in my hands that were so bad that my fingers in class would be immobile. I couldn't hold a pen. They would turn white and it would just become numb. So I reached out to Sandra because I wanted to give back and I wanted to help people not run into what I was dealing with.
And Sandra's the co-founder of Diabetic Support Services.
Correct.
Yeah, and her husband has lived with diabetes his entire life. So
Almost from the age of 21 is when he was diagnosed.
So he and Tiffany had something a
Yeah,
little bit in common.
very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're really blessed. Tiffany's an amazing spirit. You know, that is basically the culture of DSS. You know, we're the get it done type of people, and you pull your bootstraps up, and you find a way to make life happen, and we provide people with hope. And you know, she's one of those individuals that came to us. And we're just blessed to be collaborating with her. And now she's working over at Epic Fitness, and we're putting together a program specifically to help diabetics in the community engage in a fitness program. And there's no one that's more qualified than Tiffany to help lead that.
Yeah, who knows the relationship. So when you reached out to Sandra, did they bring you in and you sort of did support groups with the folks? And
I contacted Sandra because, for one, I had never heard of Diabetes Support Services. And I heard that they were a very well-known support group in Salem, and that they not only reached out to type 1s, but type 2s as well. And I heard about My Pal Sticky, and I wanted to help kids. I wanted to help kids because I felt like if I got to kids, they wouldn't turn into teenagers like me. And so I told Sandra, you know, I'm finally healthy, I'm doing well, I want to do something with Diabetes Support Services. And she said, well, why don't you come to our support groups? So I started going to the support groups. And Nate Hare had asked me to do a little demonstration for some of them on exercise and talk about why it's important and how they can do it at home and why it's something that is not only good for your diabetes, but for your overall well-being. So I started working with DSS, and I continued to work at Epic, my home gym, and my efforts with DSS began to slow down because I was so busy with work. So I kept thinking to myself, what can I do so that I can be more active with DSS? Because I love my job, but I want to help people with diabetes almost more than I want to work with exercise. And I wanted to find a way to bridge the two.
so you have blended two passions together, which is wonderful. So much story. So I want to make sure that I help finish up your story in a way. So you had your eye surgery, and obviously you've recovered beautifully from that. And has that just taken you on a course after that, pretty much to health? Because you look like you're in great shape, and
I am very healthy now. You know, I still have complications.
Sure.
My vision is still extremely damaged to the point of where, you know, I hardly drive. I have a difficult time reading. My stomach I still deal with the complications, but through exercise, I have found ways of curing certain problems or greatly improving them.
that's so great to hear. So that offers some hope for the folks that might be watching today that have either on borderline or they have children that have type 1, and hopefully your story will inspire some other folks to learn the lessons, which is a good thing. We always want people to learn from our experiences.
Yes.
So, and Nathaniel, thank you for bringing Tiffany to a place where she can reach out to more
Well, I think it's one of those
and-
God winks. You know, everyone in this community is just starting to kind of work together to produce amazing results.
And so if people wanted to do what Tiffany did and reach out to Diabetic Support Services, where can they reach you?
It's very easy. You can find us online at www.sugarsmart.org.
Okay.
You can call our headquarters telephone, 503-585-1335.
Okay, and I know that they can reach Tiffany over at Epic Fitness. And what's your website over there?
Our website is www.goepicfit.com.
Okay, or they can check in with DSS. And Tiffany, I'd like to learn more about exercise, where as it relates to being a diabetic. Will you come back and talk to me?
I would love to.
Okay, great. You two, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining me today. And we will look forward to seeing you next time on CCTV.